Hello and welcome. Today, we are going to demystify four little words that can completely change the way you manage pretty much any project: float, slack, lead, and lag. Honestly, getting a handle on these is like unlocking a new level in your project management game. So let's get right into it.
You know the feeling, right? You're just staring at this project plan, and it feels less like a helpful guide and more like a prison sentence. Every single deadline is set in stone. All the tasks are jammed right up against each other, and there is absolutely zero room for anything to go wrong. It's super stressful, and frankly, it's not the best way to get things done. But here's the secret. Most project schedules actually have a ton of hidden flexibility built right into them. You just have to know how to see it. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the concepts that let you find that wiggle room, take back control, and really turn your timeline from this thing that stresses you out into a powerful strategic tool. Okay, first up, let's tackle our first two concepts, float and slack. The absolute best way to think about these is as the breathing room in your schedule. This is your secret weapon for handling those little surprises and delays without watching the whole project go off the rails. So what is it, really? Well, float, or slack, is simply the amount of time a task can be delayed before it causes a real problem. Think of it like your schedule's safety net. If a task has, say, 5 days of float, it means you can delay it for up to 5 days and it won't mess up the start of the next task. And more importantly, it won't push back your final project deadline. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what's the difference between float and slack? And, if you want to get super technical, some purists might say that float is about how long a task can run over, while slack is about delaying its start time. But let me be real with you. In the actual world of project management, 99% of people use these words to mean the exact same thing. So for our chat today, float is slack is float. Let's not sweat the small stuff. All right, so we get what float is in general. But now we have to dig just a little deeper, because it turns out not all float is created equal. There are two main flavors you absolutely need to know about: total float and free flow. And the difference really comes down to the ripple effect. Free float is your local wiggle room. It's the amount of time you can delay one task without messing up the start date of the very next task. It's contained. Total float, on the other hand, that's the big one. That's the amount of time a task can be delayed before it pushes back the final finish date for the entire project. As you can probably guess, using up your total float has much, much bigger consequences. And this idea leads us to one of the most important concepts in all of project management: the critical path. So what is it? The critical path is simply the longest chain of dependent tasks in your project, from start to finish. And because it's the longest path, any delay to any task on that path will directly push back your final deadline. And that's why, by definition, tasks on the critical path have zero total float. These are the tasks you have to watch like a hawk. Okay, let's switch gears. So if float is all about finding the flexibility that's already in your schedule, our next two concepts, lead and lag, are about actively creating and managing time. These are the tools you use to purposefully shape your timeline. Let's start with lag. I want you to think of lag as a mandatory waiting period. It's a delay that you have to build into your schedule between two different activities. This isn't a choice, it's a necessary pause that, by its nature, adds time to your project. A perfect example of this comes from construction. Imagine you pour a big concrete foundation for a building. Can you start building the walls on top of it the next morning? No way! You have to wait for that concrete to cure and get strong enough. That waiting period, maybe it's 21 days. That is a classic example of lag. It's a non-negotiable delay you have to account for. Now, on the other side of the coin, we have lead. And this one is kind of fun. A lead is like giving yourself a strategic head start. It's when you can cleverly start the next task before the one before it is 100% done. This is all about acceleration, about overlapping tasks to save time, which is why we show it with a negative number. Here's a simple way to think about it. Let's say you order a bunch of new books, and you know delivery is going to take 5 days. Do you have to just sit around and wait? Not at all. You could jump on your Kindle the very next day and start reading the free previews. You're actually starting the reading task 4 days before the delivery task is technically complete. That 4-day head start, that's your lead, and you just shortened your overall timeline. So just to sum it up really quickly, lead is an acceleration, it saves time, and we represent it with a negative value. Lag is a mandatory delay, it adds time, and we show it with a positive value. And the most important thing to remember is that using a lead is usually a strategic choice you make, while a lag is almost always a mandatory wait you can't get around. Okay, so we've just defined 4 pretty important scheduling terms. But this isn't just about passing a test or sounding smart in a meeting. Let's talk about why knowing this stuff really, really matters and how it translates from theory into making your projects actually succeed. When you really get these concepts, it's like you gain project management superpowers. Seriously. You can manage risks better because you know exactly which tasks have little to no float. You can prioritize your team's energy by focusing on that critical path. You know which activities need constant monitoring. And maybe most important of all, you can actually protect your team's morale and well-being. And let's not just breeze past that last point. A project that has zero float across the board is a project team that is speeding towards burnout. I mean, constantly rushing from one impossible deadline to the next just absolutely crushes creativity and tanks morale. When you understand and intentionally build in float, you're not just creating a buffer in a schedule, you're creating psychological safety. You're giving your team room to breathe, to think, to innovate, and just to recharge. And that's really what it all boils down to. It all comes back to these 4 ideas: float, slack, lead, and lag. Getting these down is how you stop being a victim of your schedule and start using it as a flexible, strategic tool that works for you and for your team.
So I'll leave you with this challenge. Take a look at whatever project you're working on right now. Where's your float? Can you find it? Where could you strategically apply a lead to speed things up? How are you going to use these 4 tools to build a schedule that's smarter, stronger, and frankly, a little more human? Thanks for tuning in to this explainer.